The Alien franchise isn't necessarily something I'm a major, huge, awesome, mega, ultra big fan of, but I have all the movies. I've watched the movies. I enjoy most all of them, even the bad ones. I enjoy them. I don't consider Prometheus or Covenant to be the bad ones. I consider them to probably be some of the more interesting ones, the more philosophically interesting ones, the more background building interesting ones, the more world building and expanding interesting ones. I like those for how cognitive they are. But I also like Alien 3 and 4 for how campy they are. But I definitely think that Alien and Aliens are the best ones. It's just the common, non-logical, obvious thing to say. But when it comes to Alien Romulus, I feel like I'm torn. I'm torn. Because it feels like it's giving you a little bit of everything. There's a sequence in the final act that gives you some stuff from Prometheus and Covenant, with experimentation with the black goo. There's an engineer face on one of the aliens, which means that's probably some DNA augmentation and some stuff there. There's also a segment that makes it feel like it's ripping off that one scene from that bad Alien movie where Ripley has her child, that terrible looking alien thing, the prosthetic with that face. Some people might have war flashbacks from watching that sequence. There are segments in the opening half of the film that remind you of the first Alien movie, how a lot of the practical effects, how a lot of the computers and all of the tube TVs and all of that stuff look how the effects looked in the original Alien. They're definitely calling back and doing member berries there. I really appreciated that too. I like the pulse rifle. I love the pulse rifle sequences. I like how the ship looks. I like how it's like this horror theme park ride. Well, the whole movie feels like a theme park ride. You're going through a theme park. You're going through various stages of a video game. Going through trying to survive each puzzle and solving a puzzle. Going through it. It's very gamey. It's very by the books, on rails type of funhouse, horror funhouse type of story. Which is fine. We tell stories like that all the time. The characters are probably the hardest for me to get behind, the hardest for me to like. Most of them have very little anything to do. There's this one character who is pregnant. That's their entire character. She has no other personality. She's just pregnant. She's there and she's pregnant. And there's the thing that happens with her near the end of the movie because she's pregnant. There's two dudes in the film. There's one who feels like the main dude, but then he dies. He's like the guy from Aliens, the main dude from Aliens. He's a little bit more capable. He hangs out with Ripley, and we like that character, and then something happens to him in the end. That's the same thing that happens here. And then the other dude is just some racial dumb dude, and we understand why he's racist, biased against synthetics. We understand why. It's a very realistic thing that happens. You see, you get one bad experience from somebody, and then you suddenly think that everybody that shares that demographic is like that person that gave you a bad experience. It's very common in nowadays times. It's something that is very common. It's not something that's very cognitive. It's very introspective. I'm a very introspective person, so when I see something like, oh, this synthetic made a decision, a very difficult moral decision that was very emotionally cold, sacrificing 3 miners to save 11 other miners, and maybe one of those 3 miners may have been somebody I liked, I'd probably be pretty miffed about that. But I would probably only channel my miffedness towards that one synthetic, not all synthetics. Just that one guy is the focus of my ire. That's how I would think about things. That's how I would channel it through introspection, and how I would channel that anger. But I'm also a very logical person, so maybe I'm an outlier here. But the character in here has to exist the way he does. He has to be biased towards all synthetics, including the synthetic on the crew, the main character team. He has to be biased towards this guy, because if he wasn't, we would not have a movie. this guy is the way he is because the movie needs to happen. The story needs to happen. It feels like a lot of these characters were written after the plot was written. The plot was written, we wrote the plot out, we have all these sequences of events, but now we have to figure out how these sequences happen. How does this character happen? How do we get this alien getting born as a weird little hybrid? Well, we have to make a pregnant character, so let's write this pregnant character in for this sequence of events. And then there's this other sequence of events where this chest burster comes out of this character. How do we make sure that happens? Well, maybe let's add this other character in who will not heed the advice of a synthetic that says, hey, you should probably not let that happen. So we have to add this character in who wouldn't listen to the advice of a synthetic, and then takes this infected character away. The infected character bursts out the chest burster, and the thing that the synthetic warned you would happen happens exactly as he said it would happen, but because this character didn't listen, we have a movie now. So it feels like the plot was written first, the characters were written later. There's a lot of sequences with very basic elementary AI ethics and morality as well. There are a couple sequences very much mimicking that very first passive line with the character who had this synthetic make this moral decision, very ethical decision of killing 3 miners to save the lives of 11 other miners during a very bad accident. We could probably have to think about how this synthetic made this decision. In the absence of emotion, it realized if we killed these 3 miners, these 11 miners would have a 100% or a greater percentage chance of survival, whereas if I tried to save all of them, maybe over half of them would die, and it goes against my programming to keep people safe. So it had to make these very tough decisions. It had to make these very tough decisions, and it had to be making them without emotions getting in the way. And in this case, we have the AI, we have the synthetic character of Andy, who's probably the best character in the movie, by the way. Andy has to make Andy, the android, Andy. So Andy has to make this a series of very ethical, morally questionable choices. And I agreed with almost all of them. I did. I'm going to just tell you that right now. I agreed with almost all of them, but I'm also agreeing with most of these from a perspective of somebody who's seen the other Alien movies. I have to be understanding here that none of these characters have ever been in a situation like this before. They haven't been in the previous Alien movie. They're just now learning about this from some half-broken synthetic connected to the ship, talking to them and telling them about what caused all these crazy things. So it's all just coming and funneling into you in a very quick, rapid series of information, and you may not know how to process all of this stuff. Your emotions are going haywire. There's an actual scene where the 2 synthetics are talking to each other. One of the synthetics, the ship synthetic Rook, who is not part of the main team. Andy's part of the main team. He is the adopted brother of the main girl, Rain. Those are the only 2 characters who I remember their names from. There's Andy, Rain, and the other synth Rook, who looks like Ian Holm's character of Ash from the first Alien movie, which feels like a creative decision because it might just be a series of synthetics from that line of synthetics, like how in the Prometheus movies, Prometheus and Covenant, we have 2 separate synths that look exactly like Michael Fassbender. So that's just from that line of synthetics. So the characters that look like Ian Holm are from that line of synthetics, so we're probably meant to realize that there's probably a bunch of other synthetics that look exactly like Andy. And so it's just that line of synthetics. So that's probably why Rook looks like Ash. That's why Rook looks like Ian Holm. I don't think that that's an insult to Ian Holm to try to use his likeness for a movie or anything like that. That just feels like a logical step to take there. Speaking of logic, Rook tells Andy that the humans are a little bit emotional, so you're going to have to make the decisions for them because they're not going to make them on time. They're going to kill themselves if you don't stop them from being too irrational. And so Andy tries his best. He tries his best to try to make a series of logical, cold, calculating decisions to save the most of the crew. usually sacrificing one or two of the other characters at the same time. There's a sequence where there's this locked door. This door is locked, right? And Andy sees the alien in the room, and there's this girl, Kay. Her name is Kay, the pregnant girl. And she's not banging on the door saying, "Open it up, let me in." And then Andy looks at the girl, and he looks and sees the alien watching the door. The alien is watching her, and he realizes that this is bait. If he opens this door and lets Kay in, the alien is going to attack. And Andy is not a military android, so the alien will probably easily overpower him. So he makes the decision not to open the door, to sacrifice Kay to ensure the survival of the two humans in his charge. I agree with this, because it seems like the most logically sound, even if it really sucks. You gotta make the best of a bad situation. You make the least bad choice, where all of the decisions you make are bad. You make the least bad decision to make the most amount of good happen. And it's just easy elementary ethics and morality things so that most people can follow and understand these things. And I probably think a lot of people are going to agree with Andy here. A lot of people are going to like this character. And then they make it, they near the second act, near the end of the movie, near the end of the second act, Andy starts to act a little bit more antagonistic, a little bit more cold in the typical villainous shtick, like kind of like Michael Fassbender's character in the Prometheus and Covenant movie, the David character. And how Rook is also acting near the end of the movie when we reveal that Rook and Andy, now that Andy has been upgraded with his AI chip, and they're both acting in the best interest of the company. In which case, I'm saying that the company is probably the corrupt entity that has the corrupt AI programming, and it's not necessarily the synth's decision-making, but it is the programming overriding their sound decision-making, so that they prioritize corrupt people over the actual complete neutral synthetic decision-making. So that's very But eventually, Rain removes the upgrade AI chip, and he goes back to being regular, normal Andy that we saw from the first part of the movie. And Andy survives the events of the movie, and we like that. We like Andy. The movie itself is fine, I guess. I don't think it's better than Alien. It's not better than Aliens. I honestly really like Prometheus and Covenant, even though the technology of Prometheus and Covenant look like they're night and day compared to Alien. We have to also remember that Alien's ship, the Nostromo, is some working-class garbage frigate, so naturally their tech is going to be very trash compared to the Prometheus ship. But then we get to the Romulus ship, and the Romulus ship has a lot of trashy-looking tech, kind of like the Nostromo's tech. And then we have to think about why. And then there are other scenes that some laboratories that are looking far more advanced and all that stuff. And then we're wondering, where's the Autodoc? Where is the Autodoc from Prometheus, you know? Maybe the Autodoc from Prometheus could have saved this one character who was infected with the chestburster. Maybe the Autodoc could have done that, but for the sake of plot, like I said, the plot was written before the characters were written, so we don't modify the plot because we have characters and decisions that these characters would make that would be logically sound for this character, so we modify the plot and the world around them to suit their decisions. No, we write the plot first, and then we write the characters next. It's a decision. It's a creative decision. I may not have done this, but I can respect their decision-making process there. So what they wanted to happen had to happen the way it happened, so that the things that existed in other movies that would make what they wanted to happen not work as well, they just wrote them out. So there's no more Autodoc. Most of the tech from Prometheus and Covenant are written out. I like Prometheus and Covenant, though. I like the tech in Prometheus and Covenant. It looks very advanced and all that stuff. But also, it kind of makes the world look real. Now, let me explain. Prometheus and Covenant are prequels. They're prequels set however long ago prior to the events of Alien, which makes me realize that as the centuries go on, the human race is decaying. And we actually get this explained to us by Rook in the movie. Rook explains that the human race is decaying. Our outposts are decaying. Humans are dying. We're just not meant to be out here in space. So we need to create a new life form. We need to speed up evolution so that people can survive out here in space. Because right now, the way things are going, everything's going to keep getting worse. The decay of civilizations on these outposts, on these colonies, are going to get worse and worse and worse. These mining colonies and all that stuff. And let me talk about the mining colony. The mining colony in Romulus was really good. I liked the earliest scenes set on that planet. It looked very good. It kind of made me think about a few things. In fact, this movie made me think about two video game adaptations that you could make nowadays. We have the tech, we have the ability, we could do this right now. The first one, set of the mining colony, made me think of Red Faction. The PS2 games, Red Faction 1 and 2, very excellent, and there were two PS3 era games that were, well, the third one is really good. It was made by the guys who made Saints Row, and the fourth one was just okay. But the first two Red Faction games, especially the first one actually on the PS2, is simply about miners on Mars rebelling against a corrupt government. The workers' rights rebellion, basically. And I loved it. It was a fantastic game, and it was set in a gritty mining area. It's very much the kind of setting that you could make in this movie. You could make a Red Faction movie today. I would say that would be a great video game adaptation that you could make right now. Make a Red Faction movie. It would definitely work. I guarantee it. And another movie that this made me think about, especially the funhouse ride, the nightmare funhouse ride of storytelling that they're exploring through the Romulus with all these creatures and things coming after them. You can easily make a Dead Space movie now. You could definitely make a Dead Space movie. This director, Fede Alvarez, I definitely say get him directing a Dead Space film adaptation. Definitely do it. Do it. I would love to see the Ishimura from Fede Alvarez's perspective. This movie was not that bad, but I like Aliens, Prometheus, maybe not Covenant, but Prometheus definitely. I like these three movies more than Romulus. Romulus is probably on the same level as Covenant for me. I like it more than Alien 3 and 4, even though Alien 3 and 4 are more entertaining than Romulus. The characters in Romulus are far more irritating than the characters in Alien 3 and 4. The characters in Alien 3 and 4 are actually entertaining. They're fun. There's some of these characters I actually really liked in Alien 3 and 4. But this one is serviceable. It's a serviceable middle-tier film. And I look forward to seeing the sequel.